Elon Musk once said, starting a company is like eating glass. Entrepreneurs are 50% more likely to have a mental health condition and more than twice as likely to suffer from depression. In a study from UC Berkeley, 72% of surveyed founders reported some mental health problem. But you might be thinking, these are still privileged people who hold power and can have enormous wealth. Try grinding it out as somebody at the bottom of the food chain, taking orders all day long. As it turns out, there's actually a Harvard study that addresses this exact question. Harvard Business School professor Tom Nichols built a data set of estimated social status and managerial levels for a pool of hundreds of GE employees. Then Nichols ran his data through various statistical models. What he found was the likelihood of death for upper management at GE was 1.4 times that of lower level employees. And that translated into a shorter lifespan of between 3.3 to 3.9 years. Now this is just based on one company, and no one's saying that CEOs work harder than everyone, like people who work in hazardous or physically demanding jobs where you could actually die. But the data does suggest that climbing the corporate ladder and becoming a CEO comes with a lot of job-related stress that could shorten your lifespan. And in my opinion, the business leaders that face the most stress are startup founders. I wouldn't be surprised if starting a stressful startup can sometimes shorten founders' lives by more than 3 years. I've worked with dozens of founders as a venture capitalist, and I'm going to talk through the 7 biggest stressors I've seen founders face. I'm hoping not to sensationalize founder stress, but to have an open dialogue that normalizes discussing the dark side of being a founder. The first is escalating expectations as part of the never-ending VC treadmill. As soon as founders take venture capital, they're immediately on the clock to hit the next set of milestones within 18 to 24 months so they can raise the next round of venture funding. And then the cycle begins anew. And those milestones are an aggressive set of growth requirements, requiring the company to double or triple in many cases year over year. And doing that means spending a lot of money on new hires and customer acquisition, which increases the company burn rate and shortens the time until the company runs out of money. It's kind of like Back to the Future, where you have to slam the pedal on the Mandalorian and hope you can hit escape velocity before you slam into the wall. And it only gets harder with each stage, from Series A, B, all the way to IPO. Second is the immense responsibility. Not wanting to let your team down, your customers, your investors, your friends and family who believed in you from the very beginning. If you have to let go of your employees, that represents a lot of people's livelihoods. And a lot of founders have told me that's the single hardest thing that they've had to do. Ultimately, your identity becomes tied to your company, and shutting it down can feel like losing part of yourself. The third reason is burnout. There's an infinite amount of work that you can take on yourself as a founder. Founders are often the chief product officer, the chief salesperson, the chief recruiter, the chief janitor, office admin. This is why effective hiring, in my opinion, is maybe the single most important skill for founders in the long run. Fourth, there's an insane level of competition right now. Venture funding is at an all-time high. So every company immediately has a dozen copycat startups to compete against. And with the big tech companies worth more than they've ever been, there's also a huge talent war right now to retain employees. So it's insanely difficult and expensive to lure that engineer away from Google. 5 is something you may not expect, but being a founder is an extremely lonely job, especially for founders who don't have a network and don't feel as comfortable being vulnerable. It's hard to feel like you can open up and have honest conversations with anyone because the people who understand the challenge you're going through, your own employees and your investors, are people you're trying to impress and retain. And 6th is constant rejection. Great ideas sound ridiculous at the outset. Sometimes as a founder, you may hear rejection so often that you actually start to question yourself. Parker Conrad, the founder of Zenefits, said for his previous venture, he pitched 60 VCs and got 60 rejections. And 7th is the fake it till you make it Instagram culture. Everyone in tech is always saying we're crushing it. The press only highlights these huge funding rounds, which realistically only happen for the very best companies, while ignoring the quiet failures into obsolescence. It's a classic Instagram effect, where you're comparing your own reality to the best of what's happening around you. And sometimes the pressure to live up to the unrealistic expectations can actually encourage startup founders to cut corners. We've seen many cautionary tales over the years, whether it's companies like Theranos, NS8, or Aussie. So if it's so brutal, why do founders do it? I think it depends on the founder. For some, they feel destined to solve a problem that they just have to stamp out in the world. Others are maybe drawn to the money and fame. And some maybe just like building things. In any case, I think it's important to be open about the huge challenges founders face in the hopes that we get better at normalizing them and helping founders better deal with them. Then maybe founders won't have to give up so many years of their lives while trying to make ours better. But one thing's for sure though, founders are the ones who are going to take this path anyways and gladly trade off years of their lives for a full life well led. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you next time.